Warning: the views on this program might be triggering to some individuals. The views of the host are his own and do not reflect the views of any guests. If you find yourself upset or angry at some of the views and opinions of this show, you can simply turn it off. We celebrate diversity and freedom on this program, and diversity is not only unique to a certain set of philosophies or ideology. The beauty of this country is that we can have a difference of opinion. Not all nations or countries can say the same, and one day, we may not be able to say the same either.
All right, here we go.
A phone ringer's off, guys.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Paul Bryant, host of A Dying Breed. Two special guests today, one returning, Mr. Stacy Eubanks, and now he's brought his best half, I've been begging for the whole time, Miss Shelley Eubanks. Thanks, guys. This is great. They came all the way from Leakesville, Mississippi to sit with us today, and we're going to have a good time. Let's start with you, Shelley. Profession, where do you work? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
I'm the Chancery Clerk of Greene County. I was elected in 2008, and I've been working at that courthouse ever since.
Okay, that's a long time. That's an elected position, correct?
It is. I have a job that I get to keep every 4 years, and then I have to run for re-election, and I've been lucky enough to be there since 2008.
I'm not going to say that's luck. You can call it what you want. You're just being modest, but that's you obviously doing your job, because those positions get turned out most every 4 years where I'm from. So you're obviously doing a good job. So tell me a little bit about what that job entails and what you can provide for your consumers, the people of the community. Why they're keeping you there for a reason. So what do you do on a day-to-day?
That's one of the best things about the job, is that when you go into work, no day is ever the same. When you plan a day, sometimes things deviate a little bit, but just off the top of my head, what I can think to tell you about, I am the clerk of the Chancery Court. We also take delinquent taxes. I am also the county auditor, county treasurer. I'm the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. Chancery Court also encompasses youth court in Greene County. We also have lunacy hearings for people who have mental health needs or alcohol and drug needs.
Did not know that.
We take care of that. And one of the strange things that a lot of people don't know about a Chancery Clerk is that sometimes when we have someone who can't take care of themselves for either physical or mental reasons, and a conservator is appointed sometimes, and sometimes that's the Chancery Clerk. So I take care of people who, I take care of them like they're my family, but they're no relation at all, and I have to make decisions for them.
I did not know that, but as far as I know, Leakesville's a smaller town. You're covering a lot of different jobs within the courthouse. Is that normal, or is that just a small town dynamic of what you've encountered?
Well, that's what the Chancery Clerks do. We take care of court, like I was talking about, and we also house and take care of land records. So we file and record deeds of trust, land records, and keep those open and available for the public also. So that is the job of the Chancery Clerk, but in a small town, I guess you're just more accessible. So even though my job is open at the courthouse from 8 to 5, it might be that I'm running in the Piggly Wiggly to get something and run into somebody who needs something, or I'll get a text on my phone, or even a message through Facebook Messenger. So, and that's part of the job, because you're elected, you work for the people, and they don't stop worrying at 5 o'clock when they're worried about taxes or something that's happening. So it's really a job that's, I don't want to say 24/7, because there aren't a lot of emergencies in the middle of the night, but sometimes there are those.
Well, and that is what I always loved about living in a smaller town, is as far as what you're able to do for people, because you're much closer to them. And what you're talking about, that doesn't happen in the bigger cities. I don't think it happens here. It's there 5 o'clock, they're done, or 4:30, they're not answering the phone. So that's what I do like about the smaller towns, and that's why you guys are sitting here, because of your hospitality. That's how I met you guys, and we'll get into that later. But this is, it makes a difference to me that you guys, both of you guys, go outside of your realm, your parameter of your work, your job title and what you're supposed to do, and I appreciate that. But with that being said, let's talk about fostering. I learned this last time. Stacy mentioned about fostering kids. I knew you guys adopted, but fostering, how many years? And I want to talk a little bit about what you've learned about the kids coming up in that position versus what all's going on. I'm just being general here, but just let you talk of what do you feel like where we're going with these kids, and what is it like to raise a kid in the internet world?
Okay. Well, it's kind of strange how we got into that. We had been taking care of my mother and helping with her. She had severe rheumatoid arthritis, and we had turned our garage into kind of a semi-apartment where she could live and we could take care of her. But in the meantime, she got really sick and she passed sometime later, and we'd gone to her house to stay with her and take care of her. So when we got back to our house, we had extra room, and we didn't really know what we were going to do, but some time passed, and I was at church one day and there was a packet of materials at the Methodist church, and I opened to see what it was because it was from Methodist Children's Home. So it was one of their booklets, and I opened it, and the centerfold was a whole bunch of pictures and articles about foster care. And so I talked to Stacy and I said, well, could I just call and get some information? And if you know me, if I'm going to just call and get information, that usually signifies trouble because I'm going to jump in. So
let me pause you
Sure.
right there for a minute. Biological children at this time, give me a timeline of where we are. You already had kids biologically, and what year was this that you found this packet?
This is probably late 2011. So Caleb, our son, was 12 and Olivia was 10. So we have Caleb and Olivia, 10 and I think 12. And it was my mother passed in 11, so I think it was later in the year. It was probably the end of the year, and so I did call and talk to the Methodist Children's Home, and they said that a social worker would come out and talk to us, and we started the process at that point because we did have some room, and we started fostering with Methodist Children's Home, and it happened that they couldn't come as far as Greene County from Jackson because it was a lot of miles.
That's what I was going to ask, where they were centrally located.
Right.
Okay.
So we started out as a therapeutic foster home, which takes care of, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, the hardest of the hardest to manage. Those are children who have really special needs. They may have some behavioral special needs, some physical special needs, and it takes some extra documentation.
Autism, stuff like that.
Right. They're just harder to place.
Right.
And so long story condensed as much as I can make it, once the Methodist Children's Home didn't come down that far, we were with a different agency, Youth Villages. They didn't have a lot of children coming our way. Finally, we ended up with, at that point it was Department of Human Services, now it's Child Protective Services. So from 2011 until probably just last year or so, we have been foster parents. So a lot of our adult lives we've been fostering.
That is a while, 2011 till now. That's quite a while, and plus having two biological kids to put through school and handle that, and so it brings us up to you fostered that up until you've adopted what year?
We adopted in 2019, December of 2019.
Okay, was she long-term foster, short-term foster, or was that something? How did that come about?
She was actually a long-term foster that we did not know was going to be a long-term foster. We had fostered children in and out, sometimes just for a weekend because a child needs placement for a weekend. Some had been longer, some had been months. But Madeline came to us, it was Stacy's birthday actually. She came for his 40th birthday. That was a heck of a birthday present.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and so she came then, and we really did not know that she was going to be a long-term foster. We had had two little boys, siblings, and they'd kind of given us a run for our money. We were tired and worn out, and we had gone on just taking a little bit of a break, a week or two break to catch up on some rest.
Yes.
And before we went out for his birthday, our social worker called, and I looked at the phone. I said, "This has got to be trouble."
Yeah.
When you get a call from your social worker when you're supposed to be on break.
Especially it's after 5.
Right. And she said, "Shelley, I have the most beautiful little girl who needs lots of love. I think it's a perfect fit at your house. What do you say?" I said, Miss Linda, may I have just a minute? She said, yes. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. So she gave us exactly about a minute, and Stacy was sitting there with me. He said, just tell her, yeah, we'll be on our way. So we changed from going to have a birthday dinner to meeting at a mutual point to
So
pick
it
her
was
up.
like they met you like halfway from
We-
where she was coming from?
We did.
She was currently in a foster home. Was she coming from a bad situation?
She was just being removed from a very horrible situation.
DHS
so,
is involved.
Right.
Okay.
So she was removed from the situation, and we met them, and she came into our lives, and it was love at first sight for everybody. And we thought we were just fostering short term.
Yeah, right.
And as things progressed,
You realized
and yes,
she
and
can't go.
and things happened, so she stayed with us. And finally, in 2019, in December, we called it our Christmas miracle.
Yeah.
She was adopted.
Yeah. So you actually, the paperwork was done right there in December around the 25th?
It was December 19th.
Okay. That's great. Guys, they're doing God's work. I promise you that. There's still good people left in the world. That's why they're here. We like to hear these good, feel-good stories. At this time, Stacy, we elaborated on what you felt initially. You didn't take any time to answer that, or what she asked you. You felt it in your heart. You had the chemistry there. You knew that you wanted to do something. So elaborate on that. What the feeling is you know, because you're still working. You know, you're a working man, right?
Oh, yeah.
Both of you working.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that's the thing about foster care is whether you have them for a weekend or whether you have them for a year or whether you have them for 5 years or whatever. We wound up having her for 4 years before we were able to adopt. And especially as a career law enforcement officer, I can't tell you the times that I've had to get CPS, Child Protective Services, involved
Right.
in situations dealing with cases that I work. And so it really pulls at your heartstrings because you just see it over and over and over, these children, and it's not their fault.
Right.
You know, it's
Never
the
is.
parents making very bad decisions that are affecting the children, and a lot of times the family members aren't able to step up
Right.
to take care of the child, and there's just nobody else. So somebody's got to do it.
Right.
And so that's why I didn't hesitate to say, yeah, just bring her on, even though it was my birthday. You know,
Exactly.
She tagged along with us and
So-
celebrated.
He just justified to me why it didn't take him long to answer, because he's seen it. When you're out there in the field, you see things. Your perception of life is way different, and a lot of people don't have the privilege of seeing what's going on behind the scenes with these kids. You hear about it; it's on the news, but it's not your business. And when you're actually having to physically remove these kids with screaming parents trying to hang on to them, you know, it's terrible. It's something that nobody wants to see, but people like him have to do it, because that's their job. They're protecting us, they're protecting the child, and hopefully the parents can get some help. But I'm guessing 9 out of 10 times they don't get the kids back because they can't get their life straight. Am I guessing about right?
A lot of times, believe it or not, their number one priority is to try to reunify.
Always.
Now, and they'll tell you that up
I
front.
agree. Biological mother and daddy.
Some situations, such as Madeline's, it just wasn't feasible. It wasn't just didn't work out, couldn't work out, wasn't meant to be. And in those situations, you know, there wasn't anybody else to step up to be able to do it. So we said yes, we'll be glad to adopt her. And then there were other situations, other children that before her that we would have adopted, but reunification was the plan, and they were able to work it out to where they were able to go back home. So, you know, it's just every situation is different. So you just never know.
If in Madeline's situation, we'll use her as particular as far as y'all get a backstory as much as you can on these, or they keep that as far as her recovering from, you know, just the situation. It's traumatizing, you know it is, but I know y'all brought her love and maybe more than what she had initially. You know, I don't know, but what kind of backstories do you guys get on these people? May not. I always wondered, you know, do you get a backstory on this? Do you know what?
And that's something
I'd want to know.
We typically ask, but a lot of times the workers don't even know, you know, because they have literally just come from a crime scene or just come from the home or just come from a hospital setting. So a lot of times they don't even know what to tell you And a lot of times, most of the times, these kids come to you with nothing.
Yeah.
Or maybe they come to you with literally a garbage bag with just a few clothes on
in it.
and those clothes are a lot of times dirty, putrid. I mean, they're not even wearable. And so you immediately have to, get them new clothes. You have to get them toothbrushes, you wouldn't think that. But so it's just very difficult. Every situation is different, and they always try to be transparent and will tell you as much as they know, but a lot of times they just don't know exactly what the situation is, unfortunately.
Right. Well, it's always tugged at my heartstrings, and thank God there's people in the world like y'all, and I've always, the kids, I've met Madeline, she seems like a great kid, and would she be in a position of being the girl I know her today if it weren't for y'all? I doubt it. She sounded like she was trekking down a terrible road. I guess getting a little bit personal, do you guys ever see her kind of falter back to her past? How do y'all handle that if she did? She starts talking about, who's my mom, dad, what can we talk to them, communicate? Again, this is what people want to know. They're curious. Y'all may not see it like that because you're just doing it, but.
Madeline very much understands that we're her mom and dad. And the funny thing is that in our community, out of the 3 children, they say that she is the most like me. She acts the most like me, so it's scary.
Scary.
Yeah, but no, she fits in. She had the community, not just our family, not just our church, but the entire community welcomed her with open arms, and it was a blessing that she was sent to Greene County because, like Stacy was talking about, you don't have clothes, you don't have a toothbrush. There were a lot of times we didn't even have to ask. There was somebody to help.
Right.
It's the beautiful thing. Madeline looked around the church and she said, I'll take you for my grandmother. You're now my nanny. Awesome. And so she has a nanny that she calls her nanny, and she very much accepts her as her granddaughter.
Nanny was proud and gleaming.
Yes, and she has, our neighbor up the road, she has aunts that she picked out, and so she got, we are her family, but she got to pick some extra family members, and that's beautiful, and they are awesome to her.
That is actually beautiful because I'd love the option to pick some of my family members. No, just joking. So anyhow, but by now he's put some pictures of her up, and you had 2 other, the biological, they are now in their 20s.
Right.
Okay, tell me a little bit about them, age, what they're doing, and where are they now? What's going on with that? They're not living at home, or they living at home now? Where are they at?
Caleb lives in Greene County, and he does some work at some rental properties, and he does some farming also. He sent me pictures of having new calves born and things like that.
Blue collar boy. I'm gonna meet you one day. I ain't met him yet, have I?
I don't think you've met Caleb.
I want to meet you one day, buddy. Man work.
That's right. And Olivia attends Mississippi University for Women, and she is finishing her student teaching, and she hopes to return to Greene County to teach and become a Wildcat again.
And what grade does she want to teach?
She wants to teach high school. She loves languages, she loves English, and she loves Spanish.
Okay, which brings me to a point that the kids of today, why did she choose? It's because of languages, obviously, for the age, but kids of today is a school teacher. My mom was a school teacher. My girlfriend's sister was a school teacher. The kids, teaching them today seems to be a different, I don't want to call it a struggle right away, but the kids are different overall dealing with it. So tell me your opinion on that. And even in high school, she may be in a better community, different community, because y'all's area, these kids, like you're talking about, blue collar guys, they have a different, the country has a different upbringing. That's how I was brought up. We had ethics. We say yes sir, no sir. We talked about this last time. It's a lost art. Tell me a little bit about her decision, and besides the languages, of going to high school.
She loves high school, and it's a good fit because she loves literature, she loves language, and so she wanted to teach where she could teach those things, or maybe Spanish. And she also loves volleyball and wanted to be able to coach some. She plays it, or she just finished up her season Mississippi University for Women, so she wants to coach. But I think Olivia being a foster sibling is going to help her have the best teacher heart,
Yeah.
because children are different now than when I
Yes.
was in school. They really are. But I think, I hate to say it, but I think
Say
a
it.
lot of that
Say
is
it.
maybe because of how children are raised now. It's difficult for them. They live in a fast time with technology, a lot of things going on, and then a lot of times they don't have supervision, or sometimes parents just choose not to supervise a whole lot. But and some of those, even children who aren't supervised a whole lot, we learn that they like boundaries and they like to have the right kind of attention. So I think she's going to make an awesome teacher because of being a foster sibling for most of her life. And the position of foster sibling wasn't always
Right.
easy.
No.
So there were stressful moments, there were difficult moments, and there were some sad moments and
Yeah.
some very, very happy moments also. But it gave her a chance to see a glimpse of what different children's lives may be like, and the different special needs that they have. It may not be necessarily educational needs. And that's one thing I tried to teach Madeline. She came in from school one day and said, I forgot, whatever child didn't do their homework. And I said, well, Madeline, they may not have a mom and dad
Right.
at home to help them.
Right.
They may not have a pencil at home. They may
Yep.
not have electricity to see to do their homework.
Right.
So you have to go beyond just this child has some behavior that's unacceptable, or
It's a
they're
whole,
not doing
whole world at the house.
right.
It is, but that's. I don't want to cut you off right there, but I just you were hitting on the points as far as exactly my thoughts. It's our generation, last of a dying breed. That's why we're here. And if I can make a difference in one person's life with this show, as far as helping them understand what's going on with this world, with the kids, because that's our future, right? That's our military, that's our police. And I'm looking at elementary school kids, and this is our future police, future teachers. It's not tracking for a good country, my opinion. I've got to say my opinion, but I don't think I'm far off, because I'm a lot of like-minded people out there think like me. Some don't. I've actually had a couple of guests on here that it was like, I brought some things to light with them, and they actually said, I never thought about it like that, thinking it's common sense to me. Common sense is lost in that. But it's that you're just right in the blend with the fostering, the adopting, the biological kids in school. Now she's becoming a profession, which brings me to that. How old is she now? She's fixing to graduate. What's her age now?
She just turned 13 this week.
No, not Olivia.
Oh,
That's
Olivia.
Madeline.
I'm
He's
sorry.
talking about Olivia.
She's 21.
But that was the next question. So 21 years old. So a senior in high school is 18. So that dynamic right there makes me curious of how that will work. Because we never had that young of teachers in high school. They were all 40 and up, it seemed. So having a substitute teacher, you may have one come in younger, but not ever that young. Do you think that's going to be a challenge for her, for being that close in age, trying to discipline these people?
Olivia, I always call her an old soul, and sometimes I'll say, Grandma, come on.
She got it in control.
She's always been very mature, very settled, and I've watched her, the way she interacted with her foster siblings and even with students when she's been doing different things. I got an opportunity to see her in action about a week or so ago, and she's very careful about how she talks to her students and tries to, let them know that she cares about them, not just educationally, but they're important, they're valuable. And so I think that may be an asset right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I definitely do. Where did you have an opportunity to see this? What did you say?
She was doing some student teaching, and I had been invited to be a guest speaker.
Where was it? Where did they have it? Location?
She's in Caledonia. She was in Caledonia High School at that time.
Okay, Caledonia. And where is that in
Lowndes County, Mississippi.
Lowndes County? Small town.
Yes, it was a very small area. It's the first time I had been there.
Yeah, I think it's, was it the closest city? Jackson?
Columbus,
Mississippi.
Columbus.
I've seen it traveling
Right.
through. But yeah, so it's similar to what you guys, are population isn't that large. Do you know your population right off? How many's in y'all's county, town?
I just looked at
Close.
it Monday, but I can't
Yeah.
remember.
I knew you had those statistics up there for real. Well, let's rewind a little bit and go through a day with what you do, because I'm curious because we did a commercial for you last year.
Yes.
And we came there and looked, and what interested me the most was the records room. That was crazy impressive. I'd be so confused I wouldn't want to go in there if I had to find something. So that is land, properties. This is where they find. What is that? What are you going there for? Somebody comes in. Tell me a little bit about that.
In that particular records room, that houses all the land records up until 2009. In 2009, like everyone else,
Digital.
we started doing digital work. So it's actually much more cost effective. It saves us in storage space, and it will retain the records much better, because with the old books that you saw, and you saw some of them were in the plastic coatings, the light deteriorates, and we have to make sure they're closed every night, and we have to be very careful with those. And it costs, I say when they go to the book hospital, if we have to have them repaired, it costs about $4,000.
And it's amazing that they can even do that, revive that paper and get it fixed or reprint or whatever they do, rebind or whatever they do. But yeah, that room was very impressive. So in other words, somebody coming in with a question about some land 2009 and later, you're going like, God dang it.
Yeah.
Samantha, you go handle this.
Well, we have some of our old records scanned, so if somebody walks in and asks for a copy of their deed, we'll look it up and figure out where it is, whether it's on computer or in a book, and we can produce a copy. And that's also, the records room is where abstractors or attorneys use if they want to say, I want to see who owns this land, somebody's wanting to buy it, I want to see if
property lines too,
right,
plats and surveys.
Right. Surveys are recorded with deeds if someone wants to record them. Those are there, and it shows whether there's good, clean title to something.
Got you. But anyhow, that's like I said, it was impressive to me. Maybe boring to you guys, but it was very impressive.
I know I'm not on camera, thank God, but I want to get back a little bit to the difficult times in fostering before we kind of pivot around.
Yeah.
And Michelle, if you could talk a little bit about how much y'all instilled faith and how important it was during those tough times.
Well, with when a child comes into the home, they wouldn't be there if they had not been abused or neglected, because that is the total purpose of Child Protective Services. So when we got a child, it was basically a traumatic time for the child, and it wasn't an easy time for the family, because all of a sudden a total stranger's brought into the home, and the family dynamics shift. So our children never knew what position they were jockeying for and what age group they would be in. We tried to keep the foster children between Caleb, who was the older child, between his age and Olivia's, and then if we had to get one out of that range, not to go any younger than our nieces who live down the road. So
companionship.
So we do have a niece who lives right down the road, and she and Madeline are the same age and in a lot of the same classes.
Yeah.
So it was traumatic for those children. They come into a new home, a strange place to sleep. They don't have really any clothes that are their own or anything to call their own. We did have a ministry called TNT, and it's a backpack, and it's called Tucked In Tight. And the girls, Madeline does that now, but Olivia and I and the youth at our church, we would put items in the bag like a toothbrush, toothpaste, colors, coloring book. We always put a blanket in there, maybe a cup of their own, or something to journal if it's an older child, and some kind of comfort toy. And we would give these out or give them to CPS to give out to children when they were removed from a home, so they had some comfort items and something to call their own.
Awesome again.
So we did that. So we would try to have some of those things on hand. If not, the community was always awesome to help us. But those children, we had children who were frightened of people, period.
Social anxiety.
Yes.
Disorders.
We had one child who had taught to be afraid of police officers, ambulance drivers, and firemen. What foster home did they put her in? The home of a police officer. Yes. So we spent a lot of time working through some therapy, meeting some of Stacy's friends, letting that child, who was small at the time, say, do you want to see their badge? And she would touch it. Do you want to see the uniform?
What age is she? You're talking about what age is this girl?
That child actually is Madeline. She is 13. So,
Wow, that's what you were building up to. I messed
She
it all
was
up.
4.
She
I'm
was
sorry.
4. No, I just said a child, but it is Madeline, and she was 4.
I messed it up.
No, it was
The big ending. Yeah. Okay, so she was 4.
She was 4 at that time, so it took a lot of work. And being from a small town, I remember it was around Thanksgiving, and I was going in Dollar General to get some last minute things for making the dinner, and the ambulance was just parked there. So I walked over to the driver who was still in the ambulance while somebody else was inside, I think. And I said, "Excuse me, sir," I said, "I have somebody who would like to look at the ambulance." And
Take a tour.
so he was so kind, and he opened up the back and let her crawl in, let her
Cool.
take a look. And he spent a lot of time talking to her, befriending her, and he gave her a special $1 to keep if she was ever in trouble, to give him a call. And so she put that, it's in her scrapbook, and that driver, I think he moved to another county, and we hated that because he was so kind and helped her get through that.
He made a difference in her life with that $1 and that tour. There's some good EMTs out there. Generally,
Right.
the EMTs are great people. I know you've dealt with them a lot, and they're always, they're really compassionate like that. That's why they got into what they do.
Right. I remember another time she had something on her chest, and she said that it was sometime after we'd worked with her, and she thought of something she probably should have told the police officers. And I said, "Well, we can tell them at some time." And we were driving, I guess she was going to daycare at that point, and we saw the chief of police in town, and she said, "I need to tell him something."
Wow.
So I just stopped the car, and I got out, and I said, "Chief," I said, "Madeline's in here, and she's got something she thinks she needs to tell law enforcement. Could you come over?"
Has she shared this with you guys yet? Or do
She
you
would
basically
talk,
have an idea?
She would talk about parts of her story as she felt comfortable at different
Okay,
times.
all right.
But at that particular day, and I don't even remember what it was, but she felt like she needed to tell him. So he came over, and I rolled the back seat down because she was in a car seat, and he leaned in the window and let her just talk
Spill
about
it.
and get everything off her mind and talk to him. And once again, the beauty of a small town.
I agree. I agree, guys. Small towns are the place. I live in a small town, and just to hit on this, I was going to tell you a while ago. My mom and dad took in one of their family members' son for a while, and I was the guy that had to deal with him because he was what they called hyperactive back then. He was ADHD or whatever now.
I'm hypoglycemic and hyperactive. I'm a hypo.
But he gave me a hard time, so I've been on that side of the fence as your son and daughter have, and it's not easy. And I almost had some resentment with my parents, like, why are y'all doing this to us? But I understood why. Their heart was taking care of this kid, because if he had stayed, he would have been in a bad place. But I was very understanding. I was 12, 13 years old at that time. But I get it, no doubt. With that being said, as far as disciplinary, who's the softest on discipline with the kids?
I'm the weak link. I'm known at home as the weak link. Yes.
It was really a 50-50 up in there. I had to ask because I didn't know. It could have been him, but just I think his background, he knows you got to do this to get that result. But you can do that because you know what he's going to do. So it works out. It's all about, it's not imbalance. It's what it takes, because you got to have that good guy, bad guy to make it work. As long as y'all on the same page,
Right.
it's good. It's
That's
perfect.
Right. And that's how it works. Because I've never been a hard but the rules we have, we're very tough on them, and that's the way it's going to be, and we're stern with that. And we treat our foster kids just like we treat our regular kids. You know?
And because the kids see that if it didn't happen that
you
way,
can't treat them
no,
different.
no, they would pick up
The
on it.
only thing you can't do with foster kids, and sometimes I disagree with that, but it's just the way it is you can't use capital punishment. In other words, corporal punishment, where you spank them. You know.
Let's not use capital punishment on anybody.
So
I'm with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
That is, I don't understand it. I don't want to get into it. It's a different day. It's some bad politics with me, but once the spankings went away, even in school, now I understand you get permission. I don't know if that's true or not. A lot changed. Mark my word, we'll go back and do dates on that. I got spanked in class.
yes.
That changed. When the nose in the corner timeouts came about, I knew it. I was like, this doesn't work. It doesn't work on me.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
We had a little girl that she definitely needed some time out, And she loved the timeout chair.
That's
She would be hanging upside down in the timeout
Exactly.
chair. She would get somebody to get her a cookie when I wasn't watching. She would eat it upside down in the timeout chair. So it really wasn't a punishment. It was great.
I think he was a timeout baby. That's what's wrong with him. Yeah, we're talking about you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably aren't the best example of disciplining kids, but it's fine.
But
And it was hard getting a good balance because it was hard for Caleb and Olivia
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And like you said, you have to be careful and make sure you don't bring extra problems and trouble into the home that your children who are already there can't help you work through also.
did you find yourself having a tendency to maybe try to be a little more lenient on the foster kids versus them because you know what they had been through, but you knew you had to keep it up here straight across the board?
And it just depends. Like for one example, we had 2 little boys come in, and the first night they were all sat down at the table, and we're passing food, and it just sounded like 2 big cows just.
Oh, look, got to
Just
bring that back
smacking
quick.
and Caleb and Olivia
Caleb
were both
said-
like, "Are you going to say something or what?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's first night there,
Right.
they're scared, so you just kind of
Right,
got to
let
let
it go.
that make it. And
Great
then
example.
within a day or two, he's like, "Look, guys, you just need to really close your mouth when you're chewing,
Right.
and try to work with them."
Who's saying that? You well,
Probably
that-
both of us, but
Okay.
yeah. So because you don't smack you at the table or anywhere else,
Right.
which is rude.
Right.
But that, and of course, those kids didn't know any better.
Yeah.
That's the way. They probably were basically cooking their own, or warming
Yeah.
up their own food in the microwave,
TV dinner.
and just eating when they could. And so that again is the sad part about the dynamics of some of the families that some of these kids have come from. But yeah, every situation is different.
All right. Do you guys see it getting better or worse? Is it a lateral run with the problem with the need of foster parents?
Oh.
What is your opinion?
It's critical. There's such a need for foster parents. But a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't do it. I get too
Right.
attached."
Right.
But
Kind of.
if you're a good foster parent, you're going to get attached.
Right. Right.
But the beauty of fostering is when it works ideally, if there's such a thing, when it works ideally is when Child Protective Services works toward reunification. That biological parent can get their life together where they can accept the child back into the home. But when that happens, and let's say we had a situation where the biological dad was gone a lot working, I called him up. I said, "Hey, if you need us to keep her, all you've got to do is call. We'll come get her. We'll keep her. If you're off working and you want us to put her in school, we'll do that." And that's the beauty of it. It should work together.
Right.
Because I don't know if you realize, but once you're a foster parent, you've had a background check.
Yeah.
And of course you love that child. And there's not one child that's come into our home that we don't love. There have been some really trying situations and some tough and
Yeah.
even some bad situations, but we love those children.
All right, at that point, let's talk about if there's anybody out here watching this has ever thought or been on the fence about fostering, pushing towards adoption or anything. What would be the process? Talk to that camera right there and tell them the process.
The first thing I'm going to say, if you have, and it's our motto, if you have room in your heart and your home, then you should at least consider fostering. If you're interested in fostering, you can contact Child Protective Services and they can get somebody, and it's called from licensure, so you can get your home license to receive foster children. That process takes just a little while. It takes probably, now it's a little faster than it used to be, but it probably takes maybe a month to get all of that done, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. Sometimes it's expedited, but you can get everything done. And I'm going to say that once licensure is complete, your telephone will probably start
That
ringing
night.
the next day, that night. We've had calls, for young children, older children, teenage mothers who are pregnant, awaiting to have a baby. We've had calls from, all different kinds of scenarios, but there are children of all age groups. I'll also say, I hear a lot of times that it's impossible to adopt a child. Well, I don't know if you ever have gone on the internet and looked at Mississippi Child Protective Services, and when you go to that, there is a place on there called the Heart Gallery, and it has a heart tab on there. If you click on that tab, it'll show you stories of children who are already freed for adoption and eligible for adoption. First, I think with that you foster for an amount of time, and then you're eligible for adoption. So, fostering is a process. You have to have physicals, you have to have TB tests, you have to have a background check, you have to, I'm just going to say it, our social worker called and said, she called me up one day and said, after several interviews, she said, okay, Shelley, today's the big one. It's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll questionnaire. And she zoomed in and did a questionnaire. They asked personal questions about your relationship with your parents. They asked how I was disciplined as a child, how Stacy was disciplined, how we discipline our children. Do we understand that no corporal punishment would be used with foster children? How we would plan to discipline them? And so, they want to make sure that they're sending these children to good, safe homes. You don't take them out of trauma and put them into trauma.
You don't take them out of the frying pan and put them right back in.
Exactly. But it takes a call, and I'll be honest with you, we made a call to change agencies because, like I said, for one reason or another, they couldn't reach our home, or there weren't an abundance of the children like we were going to foster. So it took maybe 3 calls, and finally one great social worker got a hold of us, and she just, I went to a meeting just to ask some questions. It was another one of those times I told Stacy, I said, I'm just going to go over to DHS and just, listen and ask a few questions. And when I came back, I had signed the orientation packet and we were enrolled again. So, and it was due to that good social worker.
Real quick, as far as the social workers, would you say, I know they're all great, they're trying to do what they do, but are they all equal? Or if you have an issue with one, do you have an option to work maybe with another one? Or are you stuck with that one? If you have ever had an issue with one like this isn't working out great, but this one's great? You're talking about a great one that you had. Are they different on how they deal with you?
Well, what's important to know is if you are a foster family, there are actually 2 or more social workers or caseworkers in the home. The family has a social worker. So we would have one for our needs or any questions we may have or any issues that, I hate to use the word problems, but sometimes there were those too.
It is. It's problems.
When those arise. So we had a social worker, and the child will always have a social worker. So there are 2, and then if you go, and it's what their specialty is. For example, if you're a licensed foster home, you don't miss a month. You get to have a meeting with your social worker. They come in and flush your commode to make sure it's working, turn the burners on the stove, look in the refrigerator to make sure it's working, check. They just do a house check every month. You have to do that. So, is it all wonderful and great? No. But those children, sometimes every relationship with the child doesn't work out perfectly, but a lot of times you touch those children, and it may even be way later that you realize that, or you get a message back from one of them, or you see that you made maybe a little bit of a difference. And certainly a lot of times they bless us way more than we could ever do anything with them.
That's a fact right there. That's well said. I'm glad that information's out there. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back at you with some more of Stacy and Shelley Eubanks.
My name's Stacy, I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020. One teen can come in and make you look at life in a whole different way.
He's my father, so I look up to him a lot. If I can be 10% of the man he is, I'll be a happy person for sure.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward.
Welcome back to Dying Breed with Shelley and Stacy Eubanks. We were talking about some good stuff before we left, and we're fixing to pick back up with Dogs Bryant right by my side, Pod Dog. All right, guys, let's pick up where we were a while ago. We were talking about the adoptions, how to do it, whatever. We got some good information out there. I'd like to reel it all the way back to the beginning of times where children need the assistance, need people like you guys. Stacy, I know that you have been on the forefront of situations. Let's share with the audience of what you've seen the bad times, the good times of why we need DHS, why we need you guys. Bring me back to some particular scenarios, please.
Right. So one thing about being career law enforcement, in it over 30 years, almost 22 of those years were working narcotics. So for example, like I would run a search warrant on a residence. Somebody selling drugs, might have made buys from them, going to arrest them. Whatever the scenario was, a lot of times as soon as I would get the scene safe, and what I mean by that is everybody's handcuffed and everybody's been checked for weapons, and then we start actually searching for evidence or whatever, and there's kids there, the first thing I do is go and look at the food. Look at the refrigerator, look in the pantries, look in the cabinets. And
you're actually starting to build a case at this point.
Yes,
that's basically
and I've got agents through the house searching for evidence, whatever drugs or guns or whatever, stolen property, whatever we're doing. And so I would actually go and check for the food because these kids are starving, And so you look in the refrigerator and there's beer in there, there's liquor, and there's condiments, and that's usually all you see. And so it's really sad. So I can't tell you the times that I've either sent a patrolman to McDonald's to get some Happy Meals for these kids, or we would try to go and find something. A lot of times stuff would be after hours, so I would actually keep some food in my truck, so we would actually, because we want to make those kids comfortable as we can be. And then of course a lot of times when the meth labs were just an epidemic, which they're not anymore, there's still major drug problems, don't get me wrong, but you don't see the meth labs like you do in Mississippi, like you used to. But at times those were horrific scenes where the parents were literally cooking meth in these homes where children were living. And so
let me elaborate right there for the audience. When you say cooking meth, explain the hazard to the children and people within confined quarters of what the chemicals coming off of this, what it can do.
Right. So these chemicals are so dangerous that you risk explosions, you risk fire, you risk all sorts of hazards where you could actually die. I mean, I've literally seen canisters explode, literally. Back in the day when anhydrous ammonia, which is a commercial refrigerant, you're probably familiar with that.
Yep.
It's also a fertilizer, it can be used for that, but it was also one of the main ingredients in cooking meth. And so what they would do is back then they would convert propane tanks to house this anhydrous ammonia, and it's not those canisters are not designed for that stuff.
High pressure.
So I can remember I got called. Matter of fact, it was down here to Jackson County, right off of I-10 from a traffic stop, and there was 2 5-gallon propane tanks in back, and they were full of anhydrous ammonia.
And you're talking about like barbecue grills?
Yes, I'm talking about actual propane tanks
for barbecue grills.
But a lot of times you could tell they had been doctored, and the rim there where you would actually release the gas would turn a discolored green. And when it did that, you knew it probably had anhydrous ammonia in it. So I can remember pulling those tanks out, and as a narcotics agent, you've got to document the scene, you've got to take pictures, you've got to document where everything was found, who found it, and then you've got to pull samples. I was a certified agent to be able to do that at all these crime scenes. I was probably one of the first ones.
Hazmat type stuff.
Yes, I was probably one of the first ones to be certified to do that. And then once the samples are pulled, they have to be transported to the crime lab. But I remember pulling those propane tanks out and looking at the top, and the top was just pulsating. And I said, guys, we got to back up. Those things are fixed to explode. And so we got everybody pulled back, and within 3 minutes, one of them went boom, and then there was this big anhydrous ammonia cloud.
Bloom.
Just, and I'm like, oh my gosh, And
wow.
Those knuckleheads didn't realize it, but them getting pulled over probably saved their lives.
Saved them.
Because that was so dangerous. And then I can also remember houses that actually exploded.
Yeah.
Because they're in there wide open cooking, and then guess what?
Cigarette.
They're smoking. And so they would literally explode their house. And I've worked crime scenes where these individuals literally killed themselves, or they were severely burned from the explosions. So
I knew that a lot was going on, and I was seeing a lot about in trailers. Trailer parks seemed to just make their trailers were the meth house, and they were blowing up. So I remember seeing quite a bit of that.
Yeah, it was just a crazy scene. It about cost me a divorce because I was always gone because I was one of the few, like I said, that could pull the samples, and I could remember working 3, 4, 5 of those a night because I would just literally get pulled from scene to scene to scene, and it was just nuts the way that all played out. But getting back to the kids, almost all those guys and ladies were, guess what, parents. So guess what? They had kids, and those kids were being raised in that environment. So anytime there's a crime scene like that, the first thing I'm doing is calling, at that time it was DHS, Department of Human Services, now it's Child Protective Services, CPS.
Yeah.
And you would contact them. They always had somebody on call, and I'd say, look, this is what I got. I think they need to be pulled. And then I'd have to type up a little quick report. And we had laptops in our trucks back then and little printers, and we'd print it out, and I'd just give them just a quick scenario. So that way that kind of helps them start their generation of their reports. And then from that, literally from that crime scene, those children would be taken to a foster home.
That's
or
right.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it could be a family member, grandma or grandpa, somebody that would step up. It just depends. Every situation is different. And that's where it gets back to what we was talking about earlier, where these kids have nothing. They come to you in just nasty, dirty clothes. A lot of times you could smell the chemicals on these children, and it's just really sad, the situations that some of these children came out of.
That's what I wanted to pull this back full circle for, because both of you guys have been through it, to see the full circle of what's going on now for years now. And exactly, people wonder, well, how does this happen? Because some people have never seen it. They've never lived like that. They've been privileged enough to not have to go through that or know somebody that has gone through it. So I want to educate people that the world's real out there, and it's not all hunky-dory. That's why whenever I think I'm having a bad day, I'm not. Because I got food on the table, I can eat, I can do what I need to do. So.
And that's the cost of addiction, because these people, they don't care that their kids
Nope.
are fed. They don't
Nope.
care that the power bill is paid. They don't care that the water bill is paid.
They're fixed
They don't care
first.
that their rent is paid. They're going to get high, and that is the only thing that matters to them. And when they become that addict, it's trouble.
Done.
And that's where just, when they get to that point, they can't work because they can't pass a drug test. They can't maintain talking. They can't
Right.
maintain working. So now they've lost their job. So the first thing that they do to maintain their habit is steal. They steal from their family. And then once family gets tired of it, guess what?
Put them in jail.
That's when they start just raping the community,
Yep.
stealing from neighbors, stealing from anybody. And so that's when the full-blown addiction kicks in. And it's just really sad. Because most of your property crimes, probably 90%, 95% are from drug addicts.
Drug addicts. I'd be leaning towards 99, some form or fashion. But that does bring it full circle for us, understanding, and it's always baffled me. And I've never known somebody as close to y'all that's kind of had something to do with all of it in that aspect. But you had said something about a while ago, it kind of segued into my next question as far as how have you dealt and lived this many years? How have you handled it? I know you trust him, but when he gets on these calls, it's a risk. So, and I say this because my mom went through the same thing, and I watched it. So you're obviously a strong lady. My mom was a strong lady, and that's what it takes. But how did you deal with it? Good Lord, I know you believe in him. What did you tell yourself?
Well, during the era where there were so many meth labs, that's when the children were really small, and I can't tell you how many times we've even gone to a restaurant and sat down and about to eat a meal, and back then it was that pager would go off.
It was pager.
In
What
the
did you
day of
call it?
pager. So you went from the pager, you boxed your food up, hunted a phone booth or somewhere to make a phone call, and had to call, and then he would usually have to go into work and be gone the rest of the night. But I've pretty much grown up in the legal profession my
Right.
entire life.
That's
so
help.
that did help me understand a little bit, but it didn't make me stop worrying about the danger, because it's always dangerous when an officer goes out, whether it's with narcotics or just a traffic stop, whatever it is.
Out in his uniform, period.
Right, and no matter what happens when an officer is on duty or even off duty, it's dangerous. So I would have to, just say, when everything's over, whatever it is, when it's over, call me and let me know it's okay. And so I would usually get a call that says we're finished or it's over, and I'll be on my way home, and could rest a little easier then. But it takes a lot of understanding, and especially when you have small children.
Yeah.
It was rough. And, as foster parents, we were working parents and foster
Right.
parents at that point. So it takes a lot of balance with however many children you have and whatever else you have going on.
Well, that's another milestone. Y'all have always worked too and fostered and had your own kids, and anybody with kids just knows it's hard enough just with one kid. Both parents are working. That's what it takes to get anything out of life now. Both parents have to work. But raising the kids like that is just another milestone. And y'all do other stuff in the community. I know he's a lazy llama bean doing 20 different jobs. I know you're doing stuff with the community. After hours, you spoke about that a while ago, taking calls. I know you do. I'm going to call Shelley. I got this issue. It's 9 o'clock at night, baby. And she'll answer, because they know what you're about, and you're going to answer.
And it's not just work. Even with my children and my foster children, I try to instill in them that volunteering is very important. Giving back to your community, or especially helping older people within the community, within the church. So I love the children, I love the older people, so it's kind of a perfect match, but volunteering is important.
Right, it's a lost art as far as people wanting to help. They get so wrapped up into I call it the internet world, because it's all about this and me and what can I do for me, and instant gratification is what the world's about, and I want it now. And want it now, nothing good comes about getting anything now. You work for it. You build a foundation of whatever you do to be good. It just doesn't work like that. It never has for me. Never thought.
I'll tell you one thing we do that getting it now is very helpful, and it's very rewarding. We, in Greene County, if we have a foster child that comes in by virtue of me working in the courts, or if it was a friend who had gotten in a foster child, we would do what was called a fast text. I would send out a text. I said, I have a female child, age 6, needs 6 to 8, size 6 to 8 clothes, I need underwear, need everything.
Boom.
What can you
up.
do? It'll show up.
Now, let's back up, talk about the internet now. The internet's great. If it's used correctly, it is great, but it's a lot of negative stuff, what's going on with the way kids, even adults, are dealing with it, handle everything. There's a use and abuse for everything, guys. Everything. And that includes the internet. But the internet's great. Facebook, it can be, if it's used right, it's great. You can keep up. You can find out where people, if they passed away. I used Facebook when my dad passed, and he's had friends all across the United States. All the police, counties, whatever, the snipers he's worked with, they wanted to know. Wow. They would want to know. And that's how I contacted them, because I didn't know how to find all the numbers. But the internet's a great thing. But it sounded like you got the system down. Let me ask you this, we're getting ready to start segueing out of this, is the actual people in your community, is there a lot of fosters? Is there a lot of people adopting there that you actually know in your community?
Well, there aren't a lot of foster homes in the county.
Right.
There aren't a lot of foster homes probably there aren't enough anywhere in the state of Mississippi. Right. So foster homes and families are a critical need. But I guess while we were on our journey with adoption, we have another family who are friends with us. They came in my office one day and said, hey, I want to talk to you. Well, I thought it was about some legal stuff. I said, sure, come on in. And it actually happened to be about foster care. From that conversation to theirs happened prior to us adopting Madeline. They actually adopted a child. So there's good things that happen in small communities, word of mouth. And so I think because of us fostering, not because we fostered, but because people could see that what happens and what you have to do to become foster parents, that people were more open and would ask questions.
The education of it.
And we did have more foster homes. Some of those have closed. Some have closed because of adoptions and things like that. But there's always that need. And you know, it just depends on if you can get your heart in there.
In the position, and that's what this is. A lot of people on the fence line, but it's something they've got to be ready. And I don't want anybody to jump into something for the wrong reasons for that critical. Sometimes it's better they're not prepared, they're not set up. They could make it worse for the situation to give somebody else an opportunity. You said there was another organization. You gave me the acronyms a while ago. Let's talk a little bit about that before we segue out of this.
There's a wonderful organization called CASA, and so you know, if you say I'm interested in foster care, but I don't have the room to be a foster parent, or you know, I don't ever say I don't have enough time, because I'm a firm believer in people prioritize and do what they want to do. But you know, if for some reason possibly you don't have the resources like an extra room or things like that to foster, you can get training and become a volunteer. And CASA is a court-appointed special advocate, and that CASA representative works with the court, and they're trained by the CASA staff, and they would be assigned to a case, and they may do some interviews, some maybe call it investigation for lack of a better word.
Sure. That's what it is.
Some discussions, and make some recommendations, make some reports, and they report back to the court. They're supervised by a CASA staff member or a worker. But that's a wonderful way. You know, one day, whenever I do retire, I think that's something that's really worthwhile, and I would love to volunteer with that. Yes. It's a way to make a difference without actually being a foster parent.
Right. Okay. Well, that's definitely good to know. Anybody that's has thought about adopting or has, comment below. Give me a short story. I'd like to hear it. I'll read them all. I want to know. I'll share with them. They'll be able to see them as well. But that was what I wanted to find out today, and I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. Stacy, thank you for coming back. And Shelley, thank you for showing up. It's been my pleasure. You guys have become real good friends of mine, and Hunter has the same respect for you guys. Y'all's hospitality meant a lot to us, and we appreciate it. But we thank y'all for coming, sitting in with us. Hopefully we can educate some people and take these people on the fence and maybe give them a little nudge about what's going on. But thank you guys for tuning in with A Dying Breed. I'm Paul Bryant. Until next time, we'll see you.